Hi friends, this is your pal Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons and news, and the shape of news, and how we're actually going to move forward with, how we're going to move forward in getting a situation where news for Dungeons and Dragons is beneficial, truthful, and entertaining. I think it should be entertaining as well. So this is pretty fascinating. So the reason we're talking about this today is I listened to Grace Randolph. She is a spectacular. She really is a world-class movie reviewer, right? And she explained that the trades are three magazines that cover Hollywood, right? They cover movie news: Deadline, Variety, and the Hollywood Reporter. Okay, they all are owned by the same company. That used to not be the case, but they're literally known as the trades, right? And they are important from the perspective of one thing I listen to Grace because she's so good at what she does. So I love movies, right? And when I talk to people, they'll say, "Oh, hey, did you?" They'll say something like this. They'll be like, "Did you hear there's a new Batman?" And I'm like, "No, I did not hear there's a new Batman," right? And I know they're wrong. I know they're wrong, right? And the reason why is Grace actually very much applies a very significant rigor to her coverage of Hollywood. So if there's a major news story, I know she's going to talk about it within 48 hours. If she doesn't, it's because it's not confirmed and she's waiting until there's a good source, right? And so, like, if somebody says to me, "Oh, hey, did you hear about the new Batman?" I'm like, I know you're ill-informed and you still read some jank like news source, right? And you don't take movie news seriously, and a lot of people don't take movie news seriously. That's why we're talking about this, right? So first of all, we need to reach a level like this, right? Like, movie news is so advanced, so mature as an industry that there is one company that owns three major sources of news about movie news, and those are so significant they literally call them the trades, right? Like, that's huge. Like there is a lot of money, there is a lot of importance, there is a lot of significance placed on movie news. Movie news is a very significant thing, right? Very significant. All right, okay. So, all that, right? Then, what else is there? Yeah. So, that's significant, right? And we're not there. We don't have. In fact, I don't even know if there's even one. I don't know if there's one source of tabletop role-playing game news that's reliable. Not even one. I think the closest that you can count is the character sheet on comicbook.com. They clearly employ somebody. They go on at least, I think they go on daily. Maybe they don't post daily. I think they do post daily, right? Their stuff is fairly reliable to believe. Now, there is a massive slant with their stuff. They hate Dungeons and Dragons with a passionate, they despise Dungeons and Dragons, right? The character sheet on comicbook.com absolutely despise Dungeons and Dragons. They want any OSR or any indie to surpass them, right? They really hate D&D, right? But that's okay, because when we're talking about news, there are a lot of news organizations that absolutely despise the people they cover, right? This is very clear in political news, right? Every single mainstream media site absolutely despises Donald Trump, right? MSNBC, CNN, Washington Post, New York Times, you can go on and on and on and on. All the political news, they all hate Donald Trump. So the fact that there is coverage of Dungeons and Dragons being done by people who absolutely despise Dungeons and Dragons is not really new or different. It's not really that unusual, right? It's not really that unusual at all, right? Which is, yeah. So that actually, we don't need to fix that right away. But we do need to get to the point where let's also talk about the character sheet on comicbook.com. So they actually function like a real news site from the perspective of they clearly are professional, right? They clearly are like there's somebody is paying for that, right? Like they're paying for the people who are making the news. They're paying them a regular salary, right? Which is pretty wild, right? But the issue here is they don't just cover tabletop. They cover like video games, usually when it crosses over with tabletops, and they that's about the biggest problem. They cover video games quite a bit, right? But other than that, the other issue is they don't go very deep at all. They cover Critical Role, they cover Dungeons and Dragons, they'll cover Pathfinder every now, and they'll cover any other OSR or indie if they do anything major. But frankly, it is hard for any OSR or any indie to really do anything major today at all. It's very, very difficult for them to do anything major. Just because, like, literally, Dungeons and Dragons, when they release their errata, it's a big deal. I'm not kidding. Literally, 1,000+ channels cover D&D errata. You could do a major release, brand new product line for almost any OSR or indie. If it ain't Critical Role, forget it, right? Like, you might not even hear about it, right? So that's pretty interesting, right? So we need to get to the point where we have trades. We have reliable sources covering Dungeons and Dragons news. Also, Professor Dungeon Master did a fantastic breakdown recently of what D&D news is, right? And actually, he specifically covered what is Dungeons and Dragons coverage, right? And so let's talk about what Dungeons and Dragons coverage is, right? So D&D coverage is how to play D&D, right? I'll tell you right now, and he said it too, that stuff, man, it is not getting a lot of shine, not getting a lot of love right now. It is very difficult for anyone to make anybody, or actually, it's very difficult to get even any views on how to play Dungeons and Dragons, right? And well, there's absolutely no need for it. Like, you don't need to tell anybody how to play D&D. Actually, we'll get there. So that's a struggling section. The next one is humor. There are a lot of sites that do humor. They make jokes about Dungeons and Dragons, and that's literally their content. Is they're just serving up a bunch of jokes about Dungeons and Dragons. You're like, really? Is that like a thing? Right? So the answer is yes. It is a thing. It is like it's quite literally a thing. So I thought that was very interesting. And then last is news. This is coverage of. But right now, one of the best guys who does D&D news is Nerd Immersion, right? But like he looks like a pro channel, right? But he'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, I dropped off for a week and a half, everybody. I got to work. And he does have to work, right? It's wild that anybody who's a complete amateur could look like they're not an amateur and could look very much like they're the real deal, right? Like, it's pretty wild. Like, I'm like, really? Like, this is astonishing to me, right? And it is quite surprising that we have, so Nerd Immersion is a great news channel, but he's a complete amateur, right? Like, and so I think that's something that we really need to start talking about is we need to move to a point where there are reliable professional organizations that are covering Dungeons and Dragons news. And I will tell you right now, you will never get this for the rest of the OSR and indie until it happens for Dungeons and Dragons, because they can't bear the weight. The OSR and indie don't have the traffic, they don't have the shine, they don't have the interest, they don't have the passion in their community, right? So very, very interesting. But I think that's the goal, right? How do we get there? That's a different video. But we need our own trades. We need to really grow the news information about Dungeons and Dragons. And I do think Dungeons and Dragons has reached a point where it is doing so much, it does need a genuine news source. Right now, we kind of have a quasi news source, right? News sources that are fairly good, but they're really not professional and they're really not reliable, in my humble opinion. Every single word you just heard in this video is my humble opinion. Nothing more, nothing less. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider like subscribing and have a fetch millennium.